I'm really happy to have him giving us a program this evening on turkeys, owls, and banding in Morris Woods. So without further ado, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Can I just say a couple of things
Oh,
before I turn it over to
absolutely.
John? Hi, everybody. I'm Peggy Lauber. I just wanted to say that Margaret is our new program chair. So she was responsible for putting this program together with John this evening. And we're so grateful to have you on board, Margaret. And John, in addition to this program, he's also going to be a presenter at the North Fork Natural History Conference, which is March 21st. And they changed the date, but all the information is on our website. So he's going to be presenting Roy Latham's nature journals from 1902 to 1978 at that conference. So we're so pleased that John is going to do his program for us tonight. So John, now over to you.
All right. Thank you, both of you. I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction, but here we go. Thank you for inviting me. What I'm going to show you today is part of presentations I give at Peconic Landing. On the last Friday of the month, I go and speak for 45 or 50 minutes on a bird, a plant, and a animal that you might see out your window the next month. And that's been going on now for about 12 years. So I've collected lots of little stories, birds and plants and animals. And this is just two or three of them that I've done when Margaret asked me to put something together. So it's a little bit of information about a few things. Okay. First one we're going to talk about is the turkey. That's a nice, great picture of a male. The name for the turkey was a misidentification. People actually thought it was a type of guinea fowl. And when they did, they connected it to something that was already in Europe coming from Turkey. It's not that Turkey, the country, has anything to do with, and that's where the name came from. It's really a previous bird came from that region. That's where the name actually arrived. Picture of the female. These are the largest member of the grouse family. The grouse family, the second largest wild bird in North America. The largest is the trumpeter swan. The males weigh between 11 and 24 pounds, females 5 to 12 pounds. And it has a fairly extensive range. Color is where you find these turkeys across the United States. So it's a fairly wide natural population. What do they eat? Mostly plant matter that they forage for in flocks, mostly on the ground. They prefer eating acorns, nuts, and other hard mass of various trees. That's their preferred diet. They will also climb into trees, eat some fruit. Here you can see one trying to get a few berries there. And here they're eating crab apples. So they'll go up and not just forage on the ground. The poults, the little ones, have been observed eating insects. Now, a lot of young birds are fed insects because you get a different type of diet. Seed eaters will actually go and feed them insects when they're having young, simply because of the protein and different chemicals that they can absorb. When deep snow during the winter covers the ground, they'll eat ferns, buds from plants. So they've been able to move up a little bit and get a little extra food during that period of time. Wild turkeys get by walking, but they can run and fly. Females tend to fly while males tend to run, being heavier. It's more work for them. Interestingly, they can get up to 55 miles an hour flying and running almost 25 miles an hour. Not easy to outrun them. And this is just showing a large male turkey, a tom. when he gets going, an odd back and forth waddle. And here's some females flying. Something disturbed them, and they flew up into the rest. Interestingly, they can also swim. So they tuck their wings in and use their tails and kicking with their feet. So they can actually swim around. At sundown, they fly into the lower limbs of trees, move upward from limb to a high roosting spot. They roost in flocks. So you can find a whole bunch of them. At evening time, they'll all be together. Wild turkeys are polygamists. Now, one male mates with many females. There's no big one-on-one relationship there. And this is just their calls during mating. When they do mate, they eventually lay their eggs right on the ground. Female scratches a shallow depression in the soil, using only dead leaves or other plant material. It's right on the ground. The hen lays an egg nearly every day until her nest contains between 18 and 15, an average of 12. She'll begin incubating constantly after all the eggs are laid. And again, most of you probably familiar that there are two ways that birds' eggs are incubated. One is like the osprey, where the egg is laid and it's incubated immediately. And then a day or two later, the next egg is laid, and that's so that you end up with one that is bigger than the next one, which is bigger than the next one. In terms of turkeys and a lot of ducks, they won't start incubating until all the eggs are laid, so that they all hatch at the same time. That's the two different, I guess, philosophies of egg laying. They're incubated for about 28 days. And the little guys hatch out and are protected by the parent. Legend has it that pilgrims ate turkey. That's not true. Turkey didn't come around to that time until about 1800. It was a long, long time afterwards. So that's one of the fallacies that you hear, that pilgrims were eating turkey. And the other one that's all common is Ben Franklin wanted the turkey to be on the national emblem of the United States. That rumor came out from a letter that he wrote. I believe it was his sister, like 15 years after the eagle had been chosen. And he just thought that the eagle is not a very honest bird, particularly because it steals from the osprey often. The eagle will intimidate the osprey to give up its fish, take it away. So that's another falsehood. Interesting where we are now. Before 1992, you couldn't find a wild turkey anywhere on Long Island. Birds disappeared from the island in the late 19th century. But in 1992, DEC captured 79 wild turkeys in upstate New York, transported them to Suffolk County, and released them in Hither Hills and also South Haven County Park near Shirley. The ones out in Hither Hills didn't do very well and sort of died off. That never really flourished. But the ones in South Haven County Park did well. And what happened is over time, they had that park down on the South Shore. And they were able to move into Brookhaven Airport. You can see the little cross hairs just between the two arrows. And that is contiguous to Brookhaven National Lab. You can see the big circular atom smasher. That's wild territory. They were able to survive there. And then another, you can see the airport out in Riverhead. That's Grumman's old airport. And that's all fenced off and covered off. So it was able to survive pretty well there. And slowly but surely, he made it all the way out to the end of the island, Orient. So it took a while. You can see, many of you are probably familiar with the Orient Christmas bird count. When I give my talks at Taconic Landing, I show one of these birds all the time. I'll do it for 25 years in this case, but others I'll do it for 100 years to see the trend of a bird. Some of them are distinctive. You get a whole story just from this graph. And as you know, the graph is not the number of birds. There's a process where the number of people who are out, the number of hours that were spent, and the number of birds all go into a formula, and out pops an equalizer. So you can see on the top I've written between 4 and 221 birds. And then at the bottom, the x-axis is time. And you'll note, before 203, there were no turkeys out in the Orient Christmas bird count. So again, they were released in 92, 93, and it took a while for them to make that journey I just showed you. So you can see that they're here, and I'm sure most of you see them on a regular basis. The average life expectancy of a wild turkey is about 3 years. Some live longer, and most of the wild ones die young. Record for a banded hen in the wild is about 13 years. That would be unusual. So that's a little bit about turkeys, and turkeys on Long Island particularly. Next, we'll talk about another bird because this is Audubon. So I've taken out my bird samples. And that is a great horned owl. You know probably that they are early nesters. You see, this sky has settled in and the snow is still around. So we'll talk a little bit about a great horned owl. Now, when we looked at the other map, this one is just everywhere. Great. If you look at that pink color, you can see that they are ubiquitous. They're everywhere across. They're permanent residents in all of these areas. The great horned owl is among the world's most adaptable owls, or even bird species in terms of habitat. That I showed you just before demonstrates that. Here's Pale Male. Some of you might have seen him in New York City. Pale Male died 2 years ago, I believe. But again, New York City, suburban areas. There's one out in the prairies on a fence post. This is the desert. You can see him in the desert. The boreal forest. Again. No, I don't know why this is here. I'm sorry. Species horns are neither ears nor horn, simply tufts of feather. There's all sorts of debates of why they're there, what they do. It's not clear. They are not ears, and they're simply tufts. The distinctive call. Besides the call, the voice, the eyes of the great horned owls are amongst the largest and most powerfully acute in the animal kingdom. when you match them against others, their eyes are just slightly smaller than the eyes of a human being and rank proportionately among the largest eyes of all terrestrial vertebrates. In relationship to their size, their eyes are very large. They also have sensitive hearing, thanks in part to the facial discs. You see all the feathers facing, they're directional on each side, pushing the sounds in and toward the ear. The other thing about owls is that the ears are not on the same plane. One ear is slightly higher than the other. I couldn't find it for great hound, but I found a picture of a boreal owl. And if you see on the right and compare it to the ear on the left, on the picture, you'll see that there's a different height. They're in different positions. So if we look at the little mouse down on the ground, the left ear, the arrow is shorter. The right ear, the arrow is longer. So if we look over in the diagram in the stimulus, one is slightly behind the other. There's a fraction microseconds difference between when it's arriving. And from that, the owl's able to process that data and locate it just like we do GPS and their satellites up above. They're using the same kind of thing. They're sending two signals and they're finding out where that particular little mouse is. So it's due to the different heights of the ears and the time it takes for the signal to get to each ear. Even though the female great horned owl is larger, and here's a great picture. The female is on the right, the male is on the left. The male has a much larger voice box and a deeper voice. The average adult measures 22 inches long, almost 2 feet high. Now just think of that, put up your hands and measure 2 feet. It's a fairly large bird, 48-inch wingspan and weighs about 3 pounds. Now, we can move our eyes. When you go to the eye doctor, they tell you to move your eyes left and right. They can't move their eyes. So what they have to do in order to see around is move their whole head. So that's why you always see the owls moving, swiveling their heads around, because they can't move the eyes themselves. They have to move the entire head in order to see. And notice how many angles they can get. It's almost 270 degrees. And here's an example. So if he wants to see behind, he has to turn the head all the way around. That's how they look. Now, we said that you find owls all over. One of the reasons is it has the most diverse prey profile of any raptor. They've done research, and over 500 species have been identified as great horned owl prey. In other words, they'll eat almost anything. Almost all prey are killed by crushing with the owl's feet or by incidentally stabbing of the talons. You can see the strength there. A little mouse. Primary diet appears to be rabbits, rats, mice, voles, that type of small animal. Interesting in the picture, just to show, do you see the line across the eye? That's called a nictitating membrane. And that membrane protects the eye. It can cover it over and protect the eye and then slide back. It freely hunts any animal it can overtake, larger mid-sized mammals, various birds, reptiles. Here you can see a duck. I've seen it go after a duck. And here you see he's captured one of them. Here they've got, one of them has actually taken a red-tailed hawk. Where we lived before, we had a large pine tree. And when we first moved in, crows lived in the top of the pine tree. And after about 2 or 3 years, a red-tailed hawk moved in and kept them out. And the red-tailed hawk nested there for 3 or 4 years. And then that was replaced by a great horned owl that raised its young there. One day we looked out the backyard, and they were 2 foot high fluffs of feathers. The two babies must have gotten out, and they were standing there, and the crows were going crazy, chasing them. A signature method when dealing with large prey is they'll behead the victims. So if you see something without a head, it usually means it was attacked by a great horned owl. This was just a picture I ran across. A great horned owl caught a cat. And with the cat, it couldn't fly high enough, and it ran into the power lines, and they got electrocuted just like that. Great horned owls often feed on adult and nesting crows. For this reason, they're often attacked by crows. And you can see they mob them. And once you hear them going, you can be sure that there's an owl somewhere around. When prey is swallowed whole, owls regurgitate pellets of bone and other non-digestible bits about 6 to 10 hours later, usually in the same location where the prey was consumed. So again, they can't dissolve the bones or the fur, and they'll cough it up as an owl pellet. And this is what it looks like on the ground. There's fur in there, there's bones, and again, as a exercise, many teachers bring in owl pellets and have their kids dissect the owl pellet, and then put the bones together, and you can figure out what it had for lunch just by the bones. So that's a little bit about, great horned owls are some of the earliest breeding, and that's why December, January. So they have bred, and now they're laying their eggs and they're incubating them. So they're very, very early breeders, and they are monogamous, meaning that they stay together as one pair. Like almost all owls, great horned owls do not build their own nests. They take it over from somebody else. So they're not nest builders. The female alone does the incubation, brooding, and rarely moves from the nest. So the male brings the food to the female. During the time, the male hunts and brings food for her. She usually produces a clutch of 2 eggs. You can see the 2 little guys there. And there just happens to be 3. They can leave the nest when they're about 10 to 12 weeks old. They're covered in extremely soft feathers that insulate them against the cold. That's why they can be in so many different areas. Help them fly very quietly. These are blown up pictures of the leading edge on the left and the trailing edge on the right. And in each case, it's designed so the airflow over the wings doesn't leave any sound at all. I've been out and I've seen them fly real close, and you can't even hear it moving through, as opposed to, let's say, a swan, where you hear that whistling up and down. And these are very, very quiet. And just the way it grabs, you can almost see the air it's grabbing, swimming through it like. It's just a dramatic focus. They seem to be the most long-living owl in North America. One great horned owl, was recovered 28 years and 7 months after its initial banding. A more typical would be 13 years old. They are the prime predator in Long Island. All right, they are the biggest. I guess now maybe coyotes are moving into that territory as a natural predator, but the great horned owl is on the top of the food pyramid. And that is a little bit about great horned owls. And we said they lived a certain amount of years. Now, how do you know they lived those years? Bird banding. And I'm going to just go through. George Rossum was a bird bander who lived out in Orient and did it for 20 or 30 years at least in Moore's Woods, and then eventually into Ruth Oliver Park, that he would band birds. He died about 10 years ago. And it might be something for Norfolk Audubon to look for a new bird bander to be banding out in this area. And let me explain a little bit about it. Here he is, and you can see the little red house in the background. He used to give demonstrations on bird banding. At Hobart College, George first began banding birds in his early 20s with his biology professor on Seneca Lake. In order to band the birds, you need a license. In order to get the license, you have to put in a number of hours of practice and study, both of them. I'm going to talk about Moore's Woods. Many of you, I hope, know Paul Stoutenberg's columns focus on nature. For 50 years, he wrote a weekly column. And if you're bored and have nothing to do, you can go back and read every one of the columns. They're on the internet. And you can search them. If you want to search October, all his columns with October. If you want to search swans, every column he wrote on swans can come up. So it's a valuable, I use it in all my talks at Peconic Landing. So just as a point, George Rossum set his bird traps up in Moore's Woods. And many of you are probably familiar with it, but I thought I would just go through for a moment a history of it. And this is from Paul Stoutenberg's column. Moore's Woods was given to the Moore family in 1640 by a grant. Around 1870, Mr. William Moore decided to drain Silver Lake. As around this time, Moore's Woods and the surrounding area was a dismal swamp and a great insect problem. He hired laborers from New York City to dig ditches to drain Silver Lake, therefore drying up the woods and relieving the insect problem. Unknown to him, Silver Lake is spring-led and is impossible to drain. The attempt was known as Moore's Folly. In other words, the area up there is actually in the groundwater, so that it's connected to the groundwater. You could never replace or get rid of the groundwater. The 200-acre parcel is totally owned by the Greenport Water Authority and is used as a watershed now. And you can see, deep in Moore's Woods, out along the banks of Dam Pond, George Rossum spent nearly 2 decades meticulously documenting the history of nesting and migratory birds. That's one of the cuts that you see that ran through. After college, he honed his skills under a master birder bander until he received his license decades ago. These are 2 people setting up the mist nets. You can only see the pole on the left. And if you look all the way over on the right, you can see the other pole. The nest, the net just disappears into the background. That's why the birds fly into it. Interesting, he also continued to take courses throughout his life. Some of that the Institute for Bird Populations, and became involved with their program called MAPS, Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survival. And that's what he was doing in Greenport and at East Marion. The program is a collaborative continent-wide network of hundreds of mist netting stations. Analysis of the resulting banding and demographic data provide critical information on the ecology, conservation, and management of North American land birds and the factors responsible for changes in their population. And again, if we go to another column that Paul Stoutenberg wrote, Banding Tells Life Stories. Here you can see a net, excuse me. And this is again from one of Paul's columns. During the breeding season of June and July, he has set up, that meaning George has set up his mist nets in the same place and open and close them at the same time each year. He uses 9 30-foot long by 8-foot high nests, which are open for 6 hours starting 10 minutes after sunrise. And I can account for that 10 minutes after sunrising, having spent many mornings before sunrise with him setting the nets up. He left them in Moore's Woods all tied up, and you'd have to go out a little earlier and pull them down and set them up each time you were going to do it. He'd do it about once a week. He gently lifts their feet from the entangling lines, a nail-biting task that can only be done by master bird banders certified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I have to say, after the first 3 or 4 times I went with him, went around to all the things, he one day told me, okay, John, you go that way and I'll go that way. And he left me on my own to get him out of the nets and put him in the bags and everything else. And it was quite an experience. This is a little movie that explains just bird banding, excuse me.
John, we can't hear the video. None of us can hear it.
Oh, not at all?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know what? Let me just,
Yes, sir. I'm not sure how to fix it.
I'll narrate it. How's that?
Good idea. Can you replay it?
Yep, that's what I just did. All right, we're going to talk about misting, trapping birds. So first, the setup. There's nylon nets that are very, very fine. It's like a volleyball net, and the birds can't see it. So here it is in front of you, and you can't see it. It disappears. Now, extraction. This can be very tricky, but most of the birds end up almost exactly the same kind of picture. So once you start to do it and have done it a whole number of times, a lot of it comes out very quickly. So it's not as bad as it looks. Some birds are squirmy, others are docile. Put them in a bag, tie it up, and then you bring it back to processing table. Now, at this point, these are all measuring. Every bird is banded with a unique band. That number is for that bird and is registered to that bird for life. So we can follow where it went and what's happened if it's captured again. Some of the measurements, length of the wing, and here they're looking for, in the wishbone area, they store fat. So when you blow on the feathers, you can see the yellow fat under the skin, and you can tell how healthy they are when they're going into migration time. The other thing you can do is when you blow the feathers, you can see an incubation patch where they lost all their feathers. That's what she's showing you there. So the data includes the age of the bird, so they can find survival. They can find these later on. They'll know how long they lived, where they lived, and use all that data to talk about changing environmental patterns. So that's just a general picture. I'm sorry that I thought the sound came through. I could hear it perfectly, by the way. There's George with a bird. Here he is in the newspaper. He's putting a band. You can see the tool that he has. I'll do that in a second. He'll put a leg band on and then release it. George tagged about 1,300 birds each year. About 14% of them were birds he caught previously. So that year after year, some of the same birds were coming to Moore's Woods. They were nesting in the same area, feeding in the same area, and he was able to keep a log of all of that. On the bottom, you see various bands, and each one of them has a particular number, a unique number. On the top is a gauge for what size band you're going to use. And you can see there are different numbers. And there's also a book where you can look up robin and it'll say 3B. And then you go to your ring of bands and you find a 3B and you put it on the robin, that kind of thing. So there's a book to do it, but there's also a sizing and then a pair of pliers that is specifically set to push that together so that it doesn't damage the bird's leg. Here you can see George is on the left, I'm on the right here, and I'm copying down everything. And George, who is unbelievable, could tell you whether it's a 1-year-old bird, 2-year-old bird, 3+-year-old bird, male, female, just, brooding patches, all sorts of things that he could. He took a couple of really good courses, he said, allowed him to do that. And these sheets are the same ones that you saw in the movie, that they're standardized and you make certain measurements as you go along. And this again is from Paul Stoutenberg's. Some of the data George recorded for each bird is age, sex, brood patch, fat bodies, white feather molt, flight feather wear, presence of juvenile adult flight feathers on the same bird wing, length, and weight. We'd always weigh them. So again, you take a measurement. Here's, I was trying to show you in the movie, a brood patch. All the feathers have been removed from that area, and it's full of blood circulating so that this can be placed on the incubating eggs and keep them very warm. So again, when you see this, you know there's a nest around. So that these are the kinds of notes that you would make. Here you're measuring the wing. And George would look at the wing, and I'll go through, that's him looking at a wing, but I'll use another picture I got from somewhere else. If you look down here, you see the weathered look of the feather versus, let's say, 9. 9 is a brand new feather. These are from the year before. So again, based on which feathers have been replaced, which ones haven't been replaced, you can tell how old the bird is. Here you can see in the middle of the picture where the arrows are, new feathers are coming in, and they'll extend themselves all the way out. So the one on the right will be a primary, and go all the way down. And you can see down at the very bottom how weathered those feathers are as compared to the one just to, I don't know if you can see. Can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay, this you can see is a new feather. Here down you see all the ragged edges. So you know that it's in molting, so you know some type of year. Just very quickly, the molting pattern is known, so you can tell where it is. Primary go from the middle out. The secondary are from the outsides toward the middle. So you can tell where it is and what phase it's in. This is a little better picture. Where the arrow is over here, you can see the worn feathers. And these you can see are brand new. So you can tell that this is probably a 2nd year, 3rd year bird that has been molting at the end of the summer. There's the nice feather. This is interesting. I just the primary coverts. Can you see the difference? I'll show you in a second, but here you can see it's all blue. Here you can see the brown tinge, and there's a lighter gray. Well, the obvious difference is this is 2 great tits. The juvenile are narrower, more pointed, with greener edging and a more washed out face. So here's the juvenile, and here you can see an adult. So, if you just saw the bird quickly flying by, you might not know. But when you have it, then you can make the notes on it, and the banding will be more accurate. Here you can look at the 2 different eye colors. On the left, it's dark. On the right, you can see it's a lighter brown. So you can tell which bird is an adult and which one isn't. Now, there are 3 birds I'm just going to mention that George worked with. One is hummingbirds, and he would not band hummingbirds. He felt that they got too stressed, and their heartbeat goes up to 225 times per minute. So and that's at rest, and more than 1,200 times per minute when it's flying. So when it gets trapped in a mist net, it's difficult to get it out very quickly. If you look up here, here's the heart beating right here. And I just used one of my great personal things with George. He had me put my finger on the breast of a hummingbird and feel the hammer-like. You couldn't even feel the differences, but it was just constantly going. You could feel that heart as a constant hum almost, by itself. So again, he would take hummingbirds and remove them and let them go right away. He didn't have that. The second thing, which I always let George do, were cardinals. And there's a reason for I always let George. Here on the left, you can see a cardinal with a twig. On the right, you can see a cardinal with skin. And they are aggressive in the mist net. So whenever a cardinal showed up in the nest, I'd yell over to him to come, and I never got brave enough to do it. That would be me with cardinal. And then third, which he just I wouldn't even try to do, a woodpeckers. You can see for some reason they just mess up the net completely. and it takes a very long time to clean the net out of them. And then there's always some unusual things. In 2010, it was his 17th consecutive year banding birds in Moore's Woods, marked by the smallest number of birds. Just to give you, this data is also available at MAPS. So I wrote out to them, asked them for the data, and they gave me a download of everything for all those years. I just picked out one or two. And again, it would just show how many he got during the summertime. And again, Carolina wren, they're nesting in Moore's Woods. There's their numbers over a period of, 18 years. Chickadee, again, numbers. Again, that's all valuable stuff. And then there'd be some unusual ones that he might show up. Bay-breasted, indigo bunting, and even a red tail. George died in 2013. He was 77 years. He owned Preston. Some of you might know him from there. That's a little bit about bird banding. So if there are any questions, I can try to answer them.
I have a question.
You're allowed.
If you can hear me?
Yes.
I didn't realize that the turkeys migrated in the way that you showed. How did they get onto Shelter Island? Did they swim across?
That I don't know. I would say they could have swam across.
They must have, right?
They got scared, went in the water, and got carried over.
They're definitely there.
Or else some person said, "Oh, I'd love to have a turkey in my backyard."
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how.
Tokens.
Yeah, they got free ferry tokens. That's it.
I don't know honestly, but we can write stories about it.
Amy has a question. Let's see. How can someone get involved in a banding program? And I'm glad Amy asked that, because I was going to say that we are definitely very much want to find a bird bander to replace George, because there's been such a void since he passed away, as you pointed out, more than 10 years ago. We have not had a licensed bird bander on the North Fork to track these birds, and it's so important. We're looking for, is anyone interested in doing that? It's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife course, as John mentioned. And, we can certainly, at Audubon, we would very much like to support anyone that's interested in getting a banding license. So reach out to us, info@northforkaudubon.org. And we, my husband and I had the great pleasure of knowing George, and we miss him terribly. It was the highlight of our weekend to go find him banding in at Dam Pond or in Moore's Woods, and watch what he did and everything. And that's so cool that you got to actually participate, John, and get those birds out of the mist nets, because it looks like a terrifying proposition.
I was not very comfortable the first time, put it that way. I was surprised when he asked me to do it. But I felt privileged that he asked me to do it too.
Yes, yeah, a privilege. And I didn't realize that he was working with the Institute for Bird Populations, because we are currently exploring doing a project with the Institute for Bird Populations in Central America with neotropical migrant birds that live and breed up here in the summer and that go down to Central America in the winter. And we're interested in helping to set up or work with a bird banding station down there. It's a similar program. You mentioned MAPS. It's called MOSI in Central America, which is Spanish. It's the same acronym. But anyway, it's a pretty interesting organization. I didn't realize that that's what George was working. That's who George was working with.
He also took courses out in California with them.
In California.
Yeah. He went out 4 or 5 times and took a specific course each time.
Interesting. Very cool. Does anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you so much, John. That was so interesting.
Yeah,
and
thanks, John. That was great.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could listen to another hour on on these topics for
Yes.
sure.
Yes,
Well, you're always welcome to Peconic Landing on the last Friday of the month, 4 o'clock.
excellent. Well, we so appreciate you doing this for us.
And I have lots of these stored away, so
Good.
anytime.
Well, we'll do more.
And I should say, Margaret, I'm giving the talk. I mentioned to Peggy, and Peggy said it, for Roy Latham, and that would be. I just have to say, for members, it would be really, really good. And I have it all done. So if you need something in your schedule,
Yes, that's a good
I'm
idea.
offering it.
You can
Thank
do
you.
it for us.
Yeah, that would be great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I can't remember where you said turkeys were originally from, and also that picture of the mother turkey with the babies in a tree limb. How did the babies get there?
Oh, I thought the same thing, actually. I'm not sure. I suspect they can fly a little bit, and then they might have climbed a little bit. I don't honestly know. That was a question in my mind, how they got up there and they were so settled in. When the turkeys come from the United States, they thought they were a relative of another bird that came from Turkey.
Right.
They gave it the turkey name, but the birds themselves never had anything to do with it.
Thank you.
I had a very simple question. What's the difference between the wild turkeys and the turkeys we eat?
Well, I have to tell you, at one point in my life, I was a turkey grower. We had 200 or 300 of them every year. We killed off for Thanksgiving time. But the ones obviously have been bred for the meat. So, survival of the fittest. The people who found wild turkeys picked out the one that had more meat, kept that, and then bred those. The whole genetics of developing what you want in a plant or an animal. And that's how they come about. And now they have these strains and they just sell specific strains. So they're commercial. They're not.
But it was originally the same bird.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
I have one more question.
You're allowed.
Do all birds shed their feathers yearly or how often? Like little birds, the backyard.
Most do it yearly. There are a couple of also that do it twice a year. And I'm not sure about more than that, but I know most of them are yearly. And some, depending on where they are, what they're doing, it's at different times of the year. If you're a southern bird, you might do it one time. If you're a migrant, you usually do it in the fall before you're migrating, so you have brand new feathers. So you're at your best, flying down. So most, I believe, migrate, not migrate, but molt once a year. But there are some that also molt twice a year.
Mhm.
You know any? I'm not really an expert.
But did they molt from the whole body or just the wings?
That's an interesting point. I'd be guessing. I know the wings all molt, and I suspect the body does too, because they get rid of
Yes, I think it's the whole body. I think
yeah, the whole body.
I say that because we have a parrot and the parrot molts all over his body.
Yeah.
And chickens, we had chickens too.
And chickens.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they all do it. And the down that they have to replace the down and all of that. So it's a constant process and it takes energy to do that.
Mhm. Okay, one more and I'll stop. So that picture right now, that owl looks like he's got a 360 degree.
Yeah.
He's looking totally on his back. So
Right. They almost can do. It's 270 or so.
yeah, I get you. I see it now. Right. Mm-hmm.
All right.
One
Okay.
question. I've begun to hear owls by Narrow River Road and also in by Audubon, but are they nesting? Have you
Where?
seen this year?
Oh yes, they're around. I was told, and I was going to go out yesterday and didn't make that far. But you're on Narrow River Road that you just mentioned.
I could hear the owl.
Yeah,
And I thought it looked more like a large hawk, but near the trunk of the tree, but it might have been an owl.
I think it's nesting in the osprey pole that you can look over on Danny Latham's farm. So if you're going down,
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
there's one pole that's like halfway down Narrow River, and somebody just told me that they're nesting there. So that's what you might have been hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Earlier, they were all around trying to make noise. You could hear them all over the place trying to attract. And can I just say, this is always the thing that a lot of people, most of the birds don't sing to attract a mate. It's like one of the falsehoods. The main thing of why birds sing is to defend territory. They're announcing, this is my territory, and everybody else stay out of it. And if there happens to be a female that likes this territory and knows it's the best in the neighborhood, come on and move in. But, the birds are making their songs to establish territory. Territory is the prime directive. And that's a mistake amongst a lot of people.
John, Amy has a question. Are we seeing any evidence that avian flu is affecting the wild turkey and or owl population? That's a good question.
No idea at all.
I mean,
No
I
idea.
know we know it's affecting the like domestic, like ducks and chickens and turkeys as well. I know the turkey farm, they're very worried. But I'm not sure about wild turkeys.
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't heard any, evidence of it yet, but
Yes, it would appear the wild turkeys are flourishing everywhere I wander.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And
Thank you,
we'll
John.
have you back again soon.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
John. Wonderful.
Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Thank you.
Good night, John. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks. Very interesting. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.